1935, during two cold and bitter days in December, a massive fire consumed 13 acres of downtown near Wall Street.
It was, in terms of the physical destruction, probably about equal to the World Trade Center. Disaster in terms of 674 buildings is a lot of buildings, but as a percentage of the city, much more severe in December 1835 than in September 2001.
During the fire, mobs rushed down from the 5 points, looting homes and raiding businesses.
Well, one of the reasons people joined a fire company, supposedly, was so that when your place burned, it wouldn't be looted. So there were charges against volunteer firemen, and looting was clearly one of them.
The fire changed the landscape, the economy, and the way New York dealt with disasters. A movement was now on to make the fire department paid professionals. But the gangs fought this for 25 years to preserve their party funds and autonomy.
In Miramax's movie Gangs of New York, the anti-immigrant gang leader Bill the Butcher is brought to life by actor Daniel Day-Lewis. To work again with director Martin Scorsese, Day-Lewis gave up semi-retirement as a cobbler in Venice. But once he took the role, it took over him.
My focus was very much taken by Bill. I was trying to take in the world that was presented in that script.
And my challenge, by the ancient laws of combat, we have met at this chosen ground to settle for good and all. Who holds sway over the 5 points?
Daniel Day-Lewis is amazing. He didn't act. He literally became Bill the Butcher. He spoke with the accent 24 hours.
I was raised in a very similar establishment myself.
I think actually it took him a couple of months to drop the accent.
Actor Liam Neeson, who plays Priest Vallon in the movie, recalls seeing Day-Lewis during early morning workouts at the gym.
He would always address me by my character's name, Good morning, Priest.
Day-Lewis's character was inspired by the real-life Bill the Butcher, with the minor embellishments of a glass eye and a more fitting surname.
We changed the name to Cutting, William Cutting, and sort of kept Bill the Butcher as an idea, and the fact that he was a butcher, and also the fact that he was famous for throwing his knives. He was very good at knife throwing.
Whoopsie daisy!
In the second half of the 19th century, the lawless gangs of New York became so dominant that they finally forced the formation of the professional police force.
The constables of New York City did not wear uniforms until early in the 19th century. When they first appeared in uniform, they were jeered for looking like London bobbies by a population that despised the English still at that time. And so they quickly reverted to mufti, only wearing the badge of their profession in the form of a copper insignia, and hence coppers.
Despite efforts to bolster law enforcement, the gangs were thriving as they gained power through patronage with corrupt politicians. By 1855, some estimated 30,000 men in the metropolis owed allegiance to gang leaders, and through them, to the political parties like the Democrats of Tammany Hall and the Native Americans. The Native Americans, or the Know-Nothings, were a gang-like political party of white, native-born, anti-Irish workers. This was the party of Bill Poole, an infamous New York character known as Bill the Butcher.
Bill Poole was a hero of the American movement to stop the immigrants from coming in. And one of the trades that was really common among the New York working class, Protestant, nativist working class, was butchering. They were tough, they were street people, and he was one of the ones who didn't roll over for the Irish.
The fact that he was a butcher was significant, because what was happening is that Tammany Hall was issuing licenses for butchers, and they were giving them now to more Irish people, or at least it was seen they were giving them with favoritism to the Irish. So the people who were the Native Americans, the true blue Native Americans, were losing out on jobs.
Bill the Butcher was a notorious street fighter involved with gambling and running liquor.
He died as a result of a major fight with Irish American gangsters of the time, and allegedly expired shouting, "Goodbye, boys, I die a true American."
Bill Poole died believing in his vision of America, one where the door should be closed to others once he and his kind were successful.
His funeral was one of the biggest parades in the middle of 19th century New York history. And some people see it as the last hurrah for nativist Americans in New York. After Bill Poole's funeral, it's all downhill, and then the Irish begin to take over everything.
Irish gangs from the Five Points helped elect Fernando Wood mayor of New York in 1855. Under Mayor Wood, police and governmental corruption reached such depths that by 1857 the state legislature stepped in and appointed a new police force. And this is when the situation really got complicated. The new force was known as Metropolitan and the old as Municipal, but both were still at work.
And for a while, these two police forces ran side by side and actually fought each other and released each other's prisoners, and anarchy reigned until finally Wood and his municipals were defeated.
In the spirit of things, the gangsters of the Five Points and the Bowery engaged in constant fighting, looting, and rioting. On a blazing hot 4th of July, New York saw its bloodiest gang riot yet. 5 Points gangs, the Dead Rabbits and the Plug Uglies, raided a Bowery Boys joint, provoking a gang fight that would have made the shootout at the OK Corral look tame. There were so many men attacking each other.
They picked up what was lying at hand. They'd have clubs, they'd have knives, bricks, various crank handles, bung starters. It was a full-fledged gang war that had been brewing for a long time, and this was the culmination.
Herbert Asbury, author of Gangs of New York, estimated that between 800 and 1,000 gangsters took part. Gangs were flexing their powers as never before, and politicians were eager to use their muscle to their own advantage. There was perhaps no politician in American history as corrupt as William Tweed, known simply as Boss Tweed. He would hold sway over New York for decades, lining his pockets from the city's coffers like no one has since.
He was a volunteer fireman. He was a gang leader. He did turn politics into a profession, meaning he wanted to make money from it. He was never himself the mayor. He was the boss.
Boss Tweed was the head of Tammany Hall, the Democratic political club that controlled city contracts and handed out jobs.
Gangs are part of Tammany's political machine, and gangs begin to evolve under Tweed. They defend polling places, they intimidate people at polling places, they bring in votes, they perform all sorts of street functions, and it becomes hard at certain points to distinguish where the gangs end and where Tammany begins.
Tweed consolidated his powers throughout the 50s and 60s by using gangs to steal elections with repeat voting and ballot box stuffing.
We